There are a lot of things that Peter Pan Live does right. The dancing tends to be spot on. There are obviously some really talented people amongst the cast. Allison Williams' voice is just wonderful, even though it doesn't quite match a young boy. Then again, suspension of disbelief is a thing, and you kind of have to have it in order to even consume Peter Pan, especially on stage, where it's tradition that Peter is played by a woman. And I genuinely enjoyed the song where Hook and the Pirates are singing about their plan to kidnap the boys and make them walk the plank. Hell, I think it might be my favorite version of it. But there are so many other problems with this version that it's almost overwhelming. Almost to the point of, how could you get this show so wrong? Not just that, how can you get Peter Pan wrong? One of the first things you notice in the show is some of the actors seem just bored. They don't seem to give their lines the personality of the characters they're portraying, or like Mr. Darling, they're supposed to be really stuffy and boring as a person. They seem to overdo it, which is a shame, especially for Mr. Darling, because the same guy plays Smee, who is wonderful in that role. I don't really get what went wrong except for someone directed him badly. He sounds like he hardly cares about what he says when he's talking to the children or Mrs. Darling, or even freaking out at Nana for getting dog hair on his trousers. There's just no life to this man. Not even enough life to be angry, which is kind of Mr. Darling's whole thing. One change that's more of a personal thing to me that I don't like is the alteration of people not being open to fantastic things in their life. Something I've noticed in other versions of the show is that when Mrs. Darling talks to Mr. Darling about having captured Peter's shadow, Mr. Darling takes her seriously. He examines it and decides it's not someone they know, though he looks a scoundrel. But in this version, he dismisses her out of hand, doesn't even let her show him the shadow, and like a jerk, basically reduces everything she's saying to her having been dreaming. As though dreaming as a notion is something that is preposterous in itself. And this kind of makes me feel that he's the most hate-worthy Mr. Darlings, even though his whole point is to be a jerk to everyone around him. I mean, other versions are belligerent to Nana, but none of them dismiss their wives' concerns as dreaming. Also regarding characters who missed the mark, chief among them is the title character Peter Pan. I don't know if Allison Williams is a good actress, I've not seen her in anything else, but the way she performs some of her lines, like with Mr. Darling, are less enthusiastic as they should be. And I think part of it is the way that they've changed the character of Peter Pan himself. The way he's acted and portrayed, he's too mature to be Peter Pan. He doesn't embody the negative aspects of youth that he always has. He's so mature that he finds no amusement in accidentally locking Tink in the drawer. He's so introspective that he knows he constantly forgets things, even to the point of making a joke about how it makes him so endearing. And he acts like a good leader who's just trying to protect his group. Not just that, but he sees it as a sort of duty to fight Hook and protect Neverland. That's not the same kind of Peter who will selfishly rip children away from their lives just so that he has a motherly figure in his life. That's not the same Peter who lops off Hook's hand just because it's funny. That's also not the same kind of Peter who is excited about Neverland being so small that there's very little room between one adventure and the next. He doesn't see his life as adventurous. He seems to see himself and carry himself as some sort of princely, regal figure, as though he's a protector of some sort. There's nothing to this character that makes me think he wants to always be a little boy and have fun. He's grown up already. The only difference is that he can't understand what mature love is. And it makes it really weird when he does have immature moments, like trying to extend their chase game with Tiger Lily when she's trying to warn them about Hook. I could see this as they're trying to take a character who is written to be a little jerk and turn him into someone who kids can actually look up to, but that doesn't work for the story. And what they ended up doing was make a homunculus of the kind of Peter Pan that the story required and the kind of Peter Pan that they wanted. One of the scenes where this weird mishmash can be chiefly seen is when Peter's describing when he went home to his own parents. Sure, even a child can feel sadness and mourning for essentially being forgotten, but then he has a very introspective and, for lack of a better term, enlightened thought that we ought to expect to be forgotten once we've gone away. That's not a very Peter thing to think, although I will admit because of the show that line will ring in my brain whenever I feel down. But admittedly, that's not justification enough to keep it in here. Even Wendy falls victim to this weird characterization. Yeah, sure, Wendy is being taken to Neverland to essentially be a mother to a tribe of kids, or in this version, the near-legal cast of Newsies, but that's a minor complaint amongst all the others I have. But even though she embodies motherly tendencies, she's still a child. She's given to be excited by things like mermaids, the beauty of Neverland, and wanting to see the adventures that Peter talks about. So why did they make her so stuffy? Why is she trying to get Peter and the boys to not fight Captain Hook and try to implement diplomacy? They're having her take this motherly thing way too seriously, more so than a child would. And even worse, Wendy doesn't seem to right now understand that where they live, violence is necessary, because there is a guy with a crew of other guys trying to seek them out and kill them. And she knows that Captain Hook will be coming for Peter Pan because Peter specifically cut off his hand. And yet somehow we're supposed to believe when she reasons out giving him cookies and tea will solve everything. This also feels a little bit like a mishmash of the showrunners trying to push this idea of peace at all costs, as though peace in itself is inherently good, so Wendy, our perspective character, must embody this. And hell, I for one am all for peace, but this is a situation where peace is just not an option. Also, it feels really weird that she says as upstanding English gentlemen, they must avoid war. I don't know about you, Wendy, but there are a few wars off the top of my head that I can name that happened in fairly recent history around 1911. But worst of it all is what it says about her and Peter and what the story is saying. So somehow the immature Peter Pan has the wherewithal to understand that their only option to stay in Neverland is to fight Captain Hook, and so he wants to get the boys ready for that inevitable fight. But then Wendy, the yet still child but still more mature than Peter Pan, is so wrapped up in her stubborn thoughts that she can't see the actual danger. Hell, Peter Pan shouldn't recognize the danger in this at all. This is all supposed to be a game to him. He's essentially playing war with the Lost Boys versus the pirates. But again, Peter doesn't act that way. He acts like a noble defender of truth, justice, and the Neverland way. And this goes even farther by Peter Pan taking Wendy to Marooner's Rock to show her how dangerous the island could be. And Wendy literally saying, "I only see beauty." They're not really saying it out loud, but the sense I get from this is Wendy's a girl. Of course she doesn't want to fight or understand the manly need to protect your home. And the reason why I get this sense is she's the only one who thinks this way. And it would seem to be that the reason Tinkerbell or Tiger Lily don't embody this is because they're not really girls. Tiger Lily is a sort of tomboy. She's a leader of her tribe of natives, and as the book describes her, she fends off mates with a tomahawk. And Tinkerbell, she's not really a girl, she's just a fairy. This really makes no sense, and there was absolutely no need to include this in this version. What was wrong with Peter and Wendy playing house and Wendy saying, "Oh, as their father, you must teach the boys a lesson," and then Peter going into the playful lesson of just don't grow up? And then what was the issue with Peter just taking Wendy to Marooner's Rock just to show her cool stuff because she's someone special to him? He can still exposit that Marooner's Rock is a place where sailors get left to essentially drown, but he doesn't have to be all serious about it and be the only one who can apparently see the danger in the situation. He should be getting excited by the adventure in it all. It's the same feeling that he gets when he hears a story. This whole weirdness also makes Wendy seem more likely to get swept up in the beauty of Neverland than ever think of her parents. Something that I've carried on from the movie Hook is the idea that Neverland will make you forget. Specifically, it'll make you forget the world that you've just left. It's kind of like the doorway effect, where you leave one room and you enter into another, forgetting why you enter that room and anything that might have happened in the previous one. It's kind of like by virtue of not looking at your problems, they don't exist. And that's the thing that keeps Peter a child. Even though you'll never physically age in Neverland, your mind can still age. At the end of the day, a mature mind will then remember that reality has been put away in a box and can't remain in that box forever, which is the role that Wendy's supposed to have. She's the one, though taken by Neverland, remembers that they've run away from home. Their mother must be in half mourning because she doesn't know where Wendy, John, and Michael are. One of Wendy's defining features is that she has the wherewithal to recall England and her life before Neverland. But that's not the Wendy we have here, who is so taken by beauty that she can't recognize the danger of the situation she's in. Also, Wendy's shout out at Mariner's Rock is so stupid. I can't imagine that they couldn't have figured out something better to distract the pirates with. Now, I know that a lot of people have banged on to death about the shortfalls of Christopher Walken's Captain Hook. Yeah, it's extremely noticeable that he seems to sort of be phoning in a lot of his lines, doesn't seem to have any energy, especially in scenes where it's required of him, and it's highly noticeable that he doesn't fully know his lines. We've all seen the scene where the pirates are telling Hook that the boys have found a mother, and then there's that other one where Smee had to remind Christopher Walken that the mushroom he's sitting on is really hot. But there's so much more problems with how they portray Hook in this. For one, I can kinda see what they're doing with making Hook more of a subtle force, like he doesn't have to yell at his pirates to get them to do things and be quietly imposing, but that really doesn't work for the character. And especially the way that Walken plays it, it just seems more tired than anything. The story that he's in and the way they portray it doesn't really fit with a quietly imposing Hook, and it doesn't really make sense that he's been able to remain captain of this ship for so long, especially since he's the scrawniest and seemingly easiest to take in a fight amongst all of them. It really bothers me too that they kind of childized Hook's ambitions. I mean, what was wrong with just wanting to kill an adolescent? He's got a personal grudge against Peter Pan? Fine, that makes drama. But no, that's apparently not good enough. Now he wants to blow up Neverland, and he wants to start a pirate school for kids. And apparently harming a child will get him sweet attention from the ladies? Yeah, the song Vengeance sucks. It's terrible. For one, it's catchy, so that's a sin on its own. And two, it was completely needless. It doesn't add anything to the character except for spoil him, as I've said. What was wrong with having a man who has a personal vendetta against someone for cutting off his friggin' hand? And by virtue of being around that person, he wants to mischief you. We don't need this subplot of wanting to blow up Neverland. It's not Neverland that he has the issue with. Something else that takes the menace away from Hook is how affected he is by seeing dead bodies. Hey guys, Captain Hook is a friggin' pirate. He sees dead bodies all the time. He kills people. There's a reason why he has a hook instead of a stub arm. So why is he so broken up by seeing dead bodies in there to the point where he's hiding tears or shielding his eyes? And again, going with the boringness train, it seems to be only that moment when he's bothered by the dead bodies that he can work up any panic. When there seems to be some sort of fiend in the cabin killing off his crew, he's just calmly sending in his men to go die. He can't even work up enough interest to fight Peter Pan. I'm not the only one who noticed, but Peter and Hook's sword fight is the worst. Hell, even the extras were able to fight in a more interesting manner than these two. I can't imagine why the choreography was so boring. I've seen other versions of Peter Pan. I've seen other versions of Peter Pan done live, and even they were able to make it more interesting than slash, hit, whirl. And I get that they're trying to be funny with Hook's extended death scene, but like the timing with pretty much all their jokes, it was off, to the point where it wasn't even funny. You're just looking at your watch thinking, is he gonna die yet? And that's another thing that bothers me. This show is filled with a lot of humor, especially in the beginning, related to the Lost Boys. Yet all their jokes fall flat because they're sped up way too quickly, which in part makes it seem like the Lost Boys don't matter. We want to get to the good stuff, which is Peter Pan, or something, because I don't see it. Speaking of the Lost Boys, they seem more like an afterthought than anything. Part of it's having so many Lost Boys, but then another part of it is they rarely stand out as people. They're more like some sort of blob, like the Borg in Star Trek. I admit, not all the Lost Boys get necessarily individual characterization in other versions, but at least some of them stand out. You know, Slightly is the self-important one who'd probably end up taking over the leader role if Peter wasn't there. Toodles is the kind of put upon one by the other boys because he's the youngest. But here, all we have are faces to identify who each of these Lost Boys are. Otherwise, they don't matter. They're essentially pawns in a chess match. Only one where their only purpose is to be taken by the other more important pieces. Another thing that they seem to be playing for a joke is Hook's love for music and using it to think. I don't get what the joke was there. I don't know why they had to explain it as a thing that's part of Hook's character. It's way more enjoyable to just be a thing that he does, and because he holds power over his crew, they just go along with it. And hell, they even enjoy it. Plus, them having been with Hook so long, you'd think that they'd get it by now that he likes music in order to think. Unless this is the first time that Hook's ever had to think. Maybe that explains why he seems so tired because he's expending all his mental energy. Man, I've spent so much time just going over the characters, and I haven't even gotten to some of the other things that are a huge problem with the show. I think I'm gonna leave it though on one of my biggest structural problems with the show. Now I want to preface this by saying I love musicals, and I love the songs in musicals, but the thing about this one is they extend and add songs to the point where it's just more boring and a slog to get through than anything. By the 1 hour mark in other versions, they're about to start the True Blood Brothers song, but in this one, they're only just getting to Marooners Rock. Again, I'll admit the dance sequences are pretty fun, but it's annoying to hear the same lyrics repeated over and over again just to seemingly fill time, because Peter Pan is a short show. It's very succinct and to the point, and what they extended it with is more fluff than anything. The Vengeance song was needless. We didn't need that overly indulgent two shadows and a Peter dancing sequence. We didn't need to hear Hook's plan to bake a cake twice. We didn't even need Peter's song about being sad that his mother and father moved on from him. A lot of these things were already said in the song originally or stated in spoken lines. I do appreciate that the show, having come into being, has opened me up to a world of Peter Pan musicals that I had not yet seen. And again, there are some things that I do truly enjoy with this show. But there's also the fact that my first viewing of this show very quickly turned into hate watching, which is something I don't do. And yeah, even though I'm a fan of other versions, hell, even non-musical versions, my reasons for disliking Peter Pan Live isn't gatekeeping or because it doesn't fit my notion of what the story's supposed to be. Again, there's a reason why I purposely seek out different versions of the same story. It's that the version and the things that they wanted to say with this story don't make sense, are rather harmful, and boring when it's not being contemptible. But at least there's a wealth of other versions of Peter Pan that I can watch instead of this. Thank you very much for consuming this video, and until next time.